Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
At the end of the day, I think that fight is worth seeing again. Like she said, one of the toughest fights she had. I think the fans really enjoyed it. So thank you to everyone who showed out tonight. I didn't have a rematch clause on my side, but I'm hoping we can get this fight done again for the fans if they want it.
Mr. Ruiz, sir, do your job, man. This is what you get paid to do. Do your darn job. Protect your fighter. This is twice already you didn't protect your fighter. Twice. I agree that when you're the champion, you get the rematch clause. It's hard to negotiate when you're the challenger. The thing is,
Michaela Mayer so obviously wants to run it back with Natasha Jonas after the controversial outcome of this past weekend's fight, and Tim Bradley is laying the blame at the feet of her longtime manager, George Ruiz, for not making the necessary provisions ahead of not just that fight, but the Baumgartner fight as well, that 2 times on 2 separate occasions going into what was a major fight for Michaela, she didn't have a rematch clause, and Tim feels that she should have had a rematch clause, that George should have fought harder to take care of his fighter. In truth, I don't think Michaela had the leverage going into the Jonas fight to have a 2-way rematch clause incorporated into the contract. She was just the challenger. Natasha was the champion.
Natasha had all the leverage.
In Tim's view, George Ruiz is at fault for not fighting harder for his fighter, but the same can be said for Top Rank, can't they?
Yeah.
Top Rank, as Michaela's promoter, that is supposed to be invested in her, yet they've been outsourcing her last 2 to 3 fights, having her fight on foreign soil instead of here in the US of A, where she would have had home field advantage.
Pendulum swings both ways.
That if they would have shelled out some cash to pay Natasha Jonas to fly to this side of the Atlantic Ocean, perhaps the outcome would have been different and the right woman would have won the fight. But they're not that invested. They didn't want to pay to play. They outsourced Michaela to BOXXER and Sky Sports. They had her fight over there on their side of things, and in many ways, that's why she got screwed.
Because you're having a fight on their side, on their dime, on their time.
Now, once again, I think it would have been very difficult to negotiate a 2-way rematch clause for Michaela going into the Jonas fight. Michaela was but a challenger. Natasha was the champion. It's not that fight that stands out to me. It's the Baumgartner fight, where I feel there could have and should have been a 2-way rematch clause. They were both unbeaten champions going in, but it seemed, at least at first, like it was the Mayer side of things that got the ball rolling, the offer to do the fight. Remember, Alicia's with Matchroom.
She was the away fighter.
And that wasn't a Matchroom show, but you know,
what?
Wasn't a Top Rank show either. Wasn't a Top Rank promotion, not really. That was a BOXXER promotion.
And I think people lost sight of that because of how Michaela was carrying on, that Alicia's riding everybody else's coattails, hers included, and that she's the reason the fight's happening.
She's about to get the biggest payday of her career going into that fight due to everyone else's efforts and how Top Rank are the ones who made that fight happening. I don't think she realized that's not a Top Rank show. It wasn't. That was a BOXXER show.
And you were boxing on BOXXER's time.
Their time. They wanted your fight with Alicia to be the lead-in to the Shields versus Marshall fight, both of which they were promoting at the time. And not but a few days ago, when she sat down with Fight Hub's Marcos Villegas and detailed that there was no VADA testing going into the Baumgartner fight, well, that fight being a BOXXER show on a BOXXER show would be the why, would be the reason.
What are you getting at?
That if there wasn't more rigorous VADA testing going into that fight, and she didn't have so much as a rematch clause going into that fight.
That's where George fucked up at.
It's hard to say that George should have negotiated for a 2-way rematch clause in the Jonas fight, because by that time, Mayer wasn't a champion anymore. She didn't have a belt, but in the Baumgartner fight going in, she did have a belt. She had 2 belts.
That's where George fucked up at.
That perhaps Timothy Bradley is making a solid point, but it doesn't really apply to the Jonas fight so much as the Baumgartner fight. That she wouldn't be here now if George would have better protected his fighter going into that fight, because immediately after, Michaela wanted to run it back. She wanted a second fight with Alicia, but she never got it because she didn't have the contractual right to one.
So Alicia moved on.
Stands out to me. I can understand wanting to box on that show, wanting Mayer versus Baumgartner to land on the same historic card as Shields versus Marshall, but that you didn't incorporate into the contract a rematch clause for your fighter to protect your fighter. You know, the first fight could have happened in the UK the way that it did, and the subsequent rematch could have happened in America, where you could have sold it on the premise of the aesthetic in the first fight and the rivalry between them, but you didn't do that. You didn't cover all the bases.
Immediately after that fight, there was a demand on the ground with the fans to see a second, to see them run it back, but never materialized because you didn't protect your fighter.
There's a feeling that Michaela Mayer's been hung out to dry, that there should have been a rematch clause in a Baumgartner fight, and that maybe yesterday's fight could have happened in America and not in Liverpool.
In the UK?
That if Top Rank were more involved and invested in Michaela's career, they would have flew out Natasha for Michaela like they flew out Gualtieri for Yanni Beck, but because they're not, they outsourced her, and she ended up getting screwed.
There's a feeling
that Top Rank's interest in growing the sport of women's boxing is not akin to that of BOXXER's or even Queensberry's, their UK ally, certainly not Matchrooms, who in many ways got the ball rolling when they signed Katie Taylor out of the amateurs.
they're not invested.
Interested that if you send Michaela to Liverpool to fight the Liverpool fighter, what do you think is going to happen? I suppose that I myself could have been and should have been a bit more cynical with my evaluation. But I thought Michaela would be able to win, and in many ways she did, but she wasn't able to get the decision.
She's not the first away fighter that got screwed on the cards, and she won't be the last. Welcome to boxing.
And just in keeping with the theme of dodgy scorecards on boxer shows and boxing's seamy underbelly, it seems an associate of convicted match fixer Mazar Majid allegedly received a cash payment of almost £80,000 in a bag from a BOXXER representative at a meeting in London last July.
BOXXER is taking center stage, though not in a good way. They're currently being sued by Matchroom, and a lot of seamy details are being leaked.
In a recent investigative breakthrough, a disturbing transaction has been brought to light in professional boxing. Lindsay Smith, known for her connections with Mazar Majid, the disgraced cricket agent implicated in a notorious spot-fixing scandal, has been identified as the recipient of a substantial cash sum from BOXXER, a key promoter in the boxing industry with exclusive agreements on Sky Sports. The boxing promoter is linked to Mazar Majid. The sum, almost £80,000, which is around $100,000 US, was handed over by a representative of BOXXER in a rather unconventional manner, cash in a bag during a clandestine meeting in central London last July, according to the Sunday Times. Mazar Majid, a figure who became infamous in cricket history for his role in the Lord's Test match corruption, seems to have extended his controversial influence into boxing. The development is particularly concerning given his 32-month prison sentence for corruption charges.
Why would the people at BOXXER be doing business with a guy like that in any capacity, on any level?
The Times' investigation, which was published last week, claimed that 2 payments were made to Star People Limited, a company which Shaliza Manji, the wife of Majid, controls. However, this week, a 3rd payment has been revealed. The aforementioned cash transaction to Smith, who has worked for Star People since 2020. BOXXER's finance manager, K2 Thaker, has denied any recollection of this meeting or payment, but the Sunday Times reports that multiple sources have informed them to the contrary.
What are they implying? That they're doing business with a guy who used to fix cricket matches. Now he's fixing boxing matches?
He's doing something, and they're paying him to do it. More than £300,000 has been paid to Star People, with installments as recent as 6 months ago. BOXXER's position, per the Sunday Times, is that the payments were made in relation to the 2022 Amir Khan versus Kell Brook pay-per-view fight.
Not enough is made of Amir Khan testing positive for a banned substance in that fight, and how the media wasn't alerted of this until a year after the fight had already taken place. It seems to me like somebody was working hard to keep that under wraps.
And how that was a BOXXER show, BOXXER who is so implicated in this investigation, people don't like to talk about that. They'd rather talk about Conor Ben, they'd rather talk about Alicia, they'd rather talk about Matchrooms fighters, because there's a feeling in the UK among the Brits that boxing on Sky Sports It's fallen off ever since they gave Ben the run of the place, ever since he became the point man for boxing on Sky Sports after Matchroom and Sky's unamicable split.
Matchroom went all in with the zone.
And they gave Ben Shalom and BOXXER the run of the place. A representative of BOXXER had reached out to No Smoke Boxing and provided their response to this information being revealed. He said, payments made from BOXXER to boxers and their representatives are paid to their companies from our business. They are fully receipted and properly accounted for in our books with invoices and receipts. And yet, the story seems to be that last July, you guys gave this dude, what, $100,000 or whatever it was, in a duffel bag?
Now what's he gonna do, stick it under the mattress?
What you've given these people is a sum total of 300,000 pounds. Majid is understood to represent Joshua Buatsi, who signed an exclusive deal with BOXXER and Sky Sports last March, and Chris Eubank Jr., whose last 4 fights have taken place on Sky Sports. Matchroom Boxing claims in a £7 million lawsuit that BOXXER and Sky persuaded Buatsi to break his exclusive deal and join them, which he did. Majid was instrumental in Buatsi's multi-million-pound move to BOXXER per a press release published by Star People in August.
Do you remember how I told you over a year ago that it seemed to me like what Ben Shalom was doing or trying to do? When they gave him the keys, when they gave him the run of the place, what he was trying to do to fill the void that Matchroom left behind was rebuild Matchroom with some familiar faces, the ones he could poach with the promise of big cash if they decided to leave Matchroom for BOXXER. And Natasha Jonas, who we talked about in my previous segment, she left Matchroom for BOXXER, and it worked out for her, but the same cannot be said. Natasha Jonas left Matchroom for BOXXER, Chris Billum-Smith left Matchroom for BOXXER, and so far so good. So far, it's worked out for them.
But as it pertains to Majid, who influenced Joshua Buatsi, per this story, to cross over from Matchroom over to BOXXER, can you really say that Joshua Buatsi, a year later, a year after going to BOXXER, that he's being promoted better now than he used to, that he's a bigger name and a bigger star now for having left Matchroom for BOXXER?
Is he?
Is Lawrence Okoli? How did leaving Matchroom for BOXXER work out for him? I'll tell you how it worked out for him. He stunk out the joint with David Light, and then he lost his belt to Chris Billum-Smith in Bournemouth, Chris Billum-Smith's neck of the woods. They had you fighting as a defending champion as the away fighter. I don't think that would have been the case at Matchroom, but you made your bed. Now you've got a lie in it.
There is more going on here than meets the eye.
But it looks like BOXXER as a promotional outfit is so implicated with what could be some nefarious business practices. Though if you needed me to tell you that things can get pretty dodgy in the sport, well, you must be new to the sport. You'd have to be new to boxing.
If you needed me to tell you that, boxing is a dirty business.
Did Michaela dirty yesterday. Look at what they did to her. And finally, in men's lightweight and super lightweight news, as it pertains to Turkey Alalshikh's interest in bringing a Gervonta Davis versus Devin Haney fight over to Saudi, a Twitter user that goes by the name Ray Jackson said, "Motherfuckers really think Saudi is about to take over boxing. Until I see Tank and Canelo over there in multiple events a year, we ain't got shit to worry about. You can't take over a sport without the biggest stars on board."
Well, Anthony Joshua's over there. He's already over there. He's already been over there. So has Tyson Fury, and they regularly make more money per fight than Gervonta does.
Alexander Usyk makes more money per fight than Gervonta does. It seems like Gervonta's fans only want to use the Ryan Garcia fight as the year mark for what Gervonta makes, for what he draws in, but let him fight Isaac, or let him fight Rayo in his very next fight.
And watch what happens.
Think he's going to sell 1 million pay-per-view buys with those guys? I don't think he sells 500,000 pay-per-view buys with those guys. He'll be back down to doing just north of 200,000 or just under that at the box office. The same way he was doing that on Showtime for all those years. He'll be doing that on Amazon. Gervonta Davis himself said, "They made me mad. If they want me, they've got to send me something to my front door, like 2 Ferraris or something."
They made him mad? How did they make him mad? By suggesting they want to pay him to fight Devin Haney? That made him mad?
Yeah, because they're putting him on the spot. Everybody knows that the Saudis are paying more in boxing right now than anybody else in the industry. So you either take their offer and you have to fight Devin Haney, or you reject it and expose yourself for being the coward that you are, defended by other cowards and other degenerates. Because if Gervonta Davis is the ambassador of anything, it's the ambassador of degeneracy.
It's the poster child for bums and pieces of shit. Look at who supports him.
Scumbags. Nothing but scumbags, and guys who contribute absolutely nothing to the sport that are actually offended that Devin Haney wants to fight him, and some of the fans, they want to see Devin Haney fight him. Turkey Alalshikh is willing to pay Gervonta Davis to do it, and for that, they're in their tits. They're offended. But for how many years was Devin right there at lightweight alongside Gervonta Davis? There wouldn't have been any need for weight stipulations. For all this talk you're now hearing about what Devin Haney rehydrated to in the Regis Prograis fight, it never would have come to that if you would have fought him when he was down there with you, when he was down there at lightweight. And for how many years was he down there at lightweight alongside Gervonta Davis without Gervonta making him an offer?
You can make him one now.
If the Saudis made you mad and you don't want to go over there, you don't want to let Turkey Alalshikh bankroll the fight, why don't you bankroll the fight yourself? You're supposed to be the A-side, one of the biggest names and the biggest stars in boxing. Send him an offer then.
Well, that's why he's mad. He doesn't want to do that either. If he did, he would have done it by now.
Not gonna do it. And if by some chance he did, and he sent Devin some kind of a proposal, it would likely be a smokescreen to cultivate public favor. A lopsided deal that no one would accept under those circumstances. A deal geared towards getting Devin Haney to walk away so that when he does, as you expect him to, you can lay the blame at his feet as to why the fight isn't happening. Gervonta Davis.
Always one cockamamie excuse after another. You don't want to fight Devin because of his weight. You didn't want to fight Vasyl Lomachenko because you weren't in a rush.
You know, right. You don't want to fight Devin because you think he's too big. Well, what about Vasyl Lomachenko? He started out as a featherweight.
Why didn't you fight him?
Shakur Stevenson started out as a featherweight.
Why didn't you fight him?
You're up there at lightweight. You've been there for some years now, since 2019. You find the time to fight super featherweights at lightweight, and at lightweight you find the time to fight a journeyman in Gamboa, a nobody in Isaac Cruz, a retard in Rolly Romero, but no time for Devin, no time for Loma, no time for Tio, no time for George, and no time for Shakur now that he's there. So what's the excuse? That you're so big a star,
So big a coward.
he's a fucking coward. He's the poster child for other degenerates, scumbags, and other cowards. He is the boxing what the Harlem Globetrotters are the basketball. He's a fucking novelty act.
It's not the real thing. What kind of fighter gets upset over people wanting him to fight another fighter?
For big money, the biggest in the industry right now, don't kid yourself. The Devin Haney money in Saudi is bigger, better money than the Rayo money in America, than the Isaac Cruz money in America, than the Frank Martin fight in America. The Devin Haney money is bigger than all of that. So if it's all about money,
He should be on board.
I knew he wouldn't be. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Gervonta Davis comes and goes, having never fought Devin Haney or Shakur Stevenson, just any of those aforementioned fighters, that you can't offer this coward enough money to share the ring with somebody who can fight back. He really is a novelty act.
A pantomime.
A parody of an elite boxer. He's not the real thing. And I think, underneath it all, his fans know that. That's why they don't want him to go over there. They don't want him to fight Devin or anybody else, anybody capable.